So we have time for a couple of questions, and I'm going to be very selfish and take the first one before we throw to the crowd. You've had a diverse and fruitful career across many different types of organizations. If you were to wind the clock back, what would you have done differently to shape the career that you have today?
That's a good question, isn't it? Because it's got me thinking. I was asked to write a post for LinkedIn, which is, what would you tell your younger self, which is probably not a bit different. And a post is usually about 600 words, maybe 1,000. And at 6,000 words, I thought I had a problem. And so I spoke to a friend of mine who was a publisher. I said, I've written these 6,000 words about what I'd tell my younger self. And she said, just keep going. Maybe a book will come out of that. And that's where the first book came from, Live What You Love.
Let's hear the book.
Yeah, I know. But I guess what I would say to myself in hindsight, now, I hate to say this, but 25 years into the Red Balloon journey, is that there will be another Christmas. And I've got a few of my past colleagues here in the room, and it's so lovely to see them because they will remember what I was like. I was always pushing. I was always in a hurry. I basically would start thinking about Christmas from about the 3rd of January. And then I'd be like, Christmas is coming, Christmas is coming, Christmas is coming. And sometimes you may need more than a 12-month horizon. Actually, sometimes if you're going to really shift something strategically, especially platform-wise, it's going to take longer than that. So I was always living on urgent, and at some point that was no longer sustainable. And I had to start looking after myself because, she says with a sore foot, I'm clearly doing such a good job of looking after myself. I didn't say I was good at it, but I had to make sure that I created some space for my own well-being because you cannot run at full tilt forever. And in fact, you're not the best version of yourself if you're running full tilt. You don't sprint a marathon. You pace yourself, apparently. Yeah. For those who did City to Surf on the weekend.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to throw it to the room. If there are any questions for the wonderful Naomi, please raise your hand. We'll have a microphone to you very quickly. We got a question up the front here.
Hey, my name's Brody. Nice to meet you. I have one question, and the question is, in your life, I'm sure you've met many, many, many people based on the 2.4 million I think you had following you on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's probably one person that stands out to you in your mind as the most influential on your growth in your journey. Who was that person, and what did they teach you?
I also think that people come to you when you need them. A bit like Carol Schwartz when she challenged me to do Shark Tank because I was a no. And in that moment, that definitely changed my trajectory. There's no doubt about that. But I also think when you're looking for mentoring and coaching, it's actually about asking who has the answer to that question, not that you necessarily want to have a long-term relationship. So you heard the purpose at Red Balloon was changing gifting in Australia forever. And I found myself in a Target store on a Christmas Eve buying $50 iTunes cards. This is a long time ago. iTunes cards for my nieces and nephews. And I said, why aren't I buying Red Balloon cards? This just makes no sense. And I said, if we're changing gifting in Australia forever, we have to be where gifting decisions take place, not wait for people to come to us. And so I said, who do I know who would know the answer to that? And I'd met Lorna Inman, who at the time was the CEO of Target. And I met her, and I called her up. And she said, Naomi, I'll come and visit you. I'm like, oh my God, CEO of Target coming to visit me at Red Balloon. Guys, tidy up, make it look nice, very professional. And she gave me her time. So it's not one person. I think it's who would be able to answer that question with authority that I can trust. And I guess it's the one thing that concerns me now is that it's really easy to ask ChatGPT. Then do you go and ask it back, or Claude, or any of them? You go back and say, on what basis do you answer that? And they go, well, it sounded nice, I thought it was funny when you talked about the please and thank you and you guys being really polite, because do you know what that costs the planet in power? It's a lot. There's actually an article about the amount of power it takes just because it has to process those words. But it's in our nature. So So I think wisdom will be materially important. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's the importance of people. It's okay to eyeball people, to put yourself, real people in a real room, not a research study. Just ask them, what do you think? Engage with people. It's not scary. I remember saying to Gemma, way back in the day, Gemma has been with me now for 23 and a half years, a very long time, and she started as a product manager, and she was frustrated because our supply partners wouldn't get back to her, and I said, well, pick up the phone. She said, what? I said, you just dial the number and they might answer. And they did. And then once there was that element of human connection, it was so much easier because they got her and they knew her.
Fantastic. All right.
Any more questions? I'm waiting for what's your favourite colour, but that might not come.
You had an amazing career across many fields, as mentioned before, and I wanted to ask a bit of a different question. What failure did you learn the most from in your career?
Well, there was, and then there was. I must admit, I don't look back, I always look forward. But I do remember, this is a really, really long time ago, I spoke to one of my mentors, and I wanted to produce 1 million catalogues. Now, this was 2005, it's a really long time ago, because I figured if people could physically see it, they would get it. I was trying to develop a market. Of course, we didn't have money for 1 million catalogues, and that's a lot of paper now, we wouldn't even think about it. And so we decided to do postcards, and it still cost a hell of a lot, and then we created not what we call now audiences, but we did geo things and everything. I was so excited. And I expected after this postcard went out that it would go like that, traffic would go like that and engagement. Nothing happened. Absolutely zero happened. It was just dead mail, and I had come from a world of direct mail. I come from a very old school. And I spoke to my mentor about it, and he said, some lessons are just more expensive than others.
It's an expensive lesson. Yes. Wonderful. Well, that is all we have time for from a Q&A standpoint.
I want to just thank BRAZE so much for having me. It is really terrific for them to host not just their customers, but their vendors, their partners, and their ecosystem. I think it's really wonderful that you can get to hang out. And I do request of you, as you go to drinks, say hello to somebody you don't know and find out a little bit about them, because that's why we're here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Naomi.